In this video, we're going to talk about the 3 major do's and the 3 major don'ts when it comes to tax structure for dropshippers. I'm George Moss from E-commerce Brokers, where we help people buy and sell businesses. And in this video, we're going to be talking about tax structures when it comes to owning a dropshipping business. Now, it's one thing to work hard for the profits of your business, but it's another thing to keep those profits. And in my business, E-commerce Brokers, where we help people exit their businesses and buy businesses, as you can imagine, keeping the profits from your exits, keeping the profits from buying a business that's operating with good cash flow is super important for our clients. So we're going to talk about 3 do's and 3 don'ts when it comes to tax structure for e-commerce and dropshipping businesses. So of course, we're mainly talking about Shopify businesses, WooCommerce businesses, and Magento businesses. If you're selling physical products on the internet, this video is for you. So let's get right into the video. As a disclaimer, this video does not constitute legal or financial or any accounting advice. Of course, talk to professionals for that. Now let's get into the do's and don'ts. So let's start with the 3 don'ts of tax structures for dropshipping businesses. Let's start with one of the biggest myths and one of the biggest thinking processes when it comes to tax structures and dropshipping businesses. Dubai isn't the be-all and end-all for your tax structures. Just setting up a company in Dubai without any residency plan, without spending any time in Dubai, won't protect you from tax claims back in the US or back in your home country. Not to mention, most Western tax authorities won't actually accept Dubai as a legitimate tax base. Now, of course, the big pro of living in Dubai is the 0% income tax. However, that only applies if you actually spend time, if you live in Dubai for a limited period. That might be 182 days, depending on your circumstances. So if you aren't willing to leave your Western country, the US, Australia, Canada, the UK, then Dubai isn't your be-all, end-all solution. Not to mention a list of cons that a lot of expats have talked about. Number 1, it is a high cost of living, which you aren't paying in some taxes. If you do live there, you're paying in rent and other expenses. Very high rental costs. There's some very strict cultural laws. And of course, no citizenship is on offer. Having had a lot of clients who have actually permanently moved to Dubai, spent time there, spent years there, a lot of them actually end up leaving because they just don't feel like it's somewhere they can stay long term. It might be cultural, it might be a list of different things. But when you're thinking about your tax structure for your business, you might, especially if you're doing dropshipping, right? This is somewhere where a lot of entrepreneurs start, a lot of online entrepreneurs start with dropshipping. But if you want to think a little bit longer term, you might find Dubai just isn't the place for you when you get into your late 20s, early 30s. And that has been my experience with a lot of my clients. So other solutions, other locations might just be better for you, especially if you don't even want to leave your home country. The second major mistake that dropshippers make is thinking that if they don't spend that much time, i.e. 30, 60, 90 days or 6 months in a country, that they don't have to pay tax anyway. This is simply not true. I can't tell you how dangerous that is. Eventually, believe it or not, I know you might be in your early 20s or late 20s, but at some point in your life, you're going to want to stay in a country for longer than 6 months. And when you don't have a record of your taxes anywhere, that's going to be a major problem. You need clear and documented residency in a tax country. I know a few entrepreneurs who've kind of lived like this. Of course, they were in their early 20s, new to the system, and they did, 30 days in Bali or 60 days in Bali, 60 days here, 30 days they just traveled non-stop. And I personally traveled non-stop for many years, but I always had a tax base. So that when it came to the point that I wanted to settle down in another country for longer than 6 months, for longer than a year, I had a record of my taxes. Because not just your home country, but the new country that you want to live in will be looking for your tax records. There is no more certain thing in life than you needing to pay taxes. All we can do is try and reduce them legally. The second big mistake is just doing nothing with your taxes, leaving them in your home country, usually a high taxation country like Australia, like America, like Canada, like the UK, like Germany, like France, and traveling the world. Now, this is fine. At least you're actually making some records of your tax and you're paying your taxes. However, you're going to be paying some of the highest taxes in the world. Registering your business in your home country without any strategic intent will mean high taxes, which will put you at a disadvantage to your competitors. You can be fully compliant without having your business based in the country you were born. Now, this might just be put down to laziness, and I am guilty of this. I, being born in Australia, started my business in Australia, I traveled the world for years before moving my tax base to a lower taxation country. Now, this was foolish of me. I didn't want to be bothered with the process of moving all my taxes and everything, but the reality is, it was easier to move my tax base to a lower taxation country, i.e. for me it was Cyprus, than it was to just do my taxes back home in Australia. It was much easier to just move my base, move also my residency to a low taxation country. And that put me, of course, at an advantage to my competitors. And of course, allowed me to save a lot of money. So we know 3 major mistakes that dropshippers often make when it comes to their tax structures. Now let's talk about 3 major do's, 3 major good moves that dropshippers can make when they're dealing with their tax structures. If you are an American citizen, if you live in America, if you're born in America, setting up a US LLC that is owned by an offshore company is a very common method to achieve lower tax. A US LLC, a non-resident owned US LLC, or a Belize company is an ideal example of a good tax structure. It is also an efficient form of tax invoice. It's perfect for Stripe and for PayPal and very common processes. Of course, Belize and the British Virgin Islands are one of those countries where it is fully legal to set up a company and reduce your taxes. So for a dropshipper, as you can imagine, with the simplicity of the process, with the reduced fees and the reduced complexity of using payment processes, and of course, the low taxes, it is a great option used by many dropshippers and e-commerce people. Now, of course, this leads us to our second do. Our second really good move for dropshippers that is very common is, of course, setting up a holding company structure. Yes, you might have a US LLC, but setting up your holding structure elsewhere. Now, a lot of people use a lot of different options from around the world. As I said, some of the most common is Belize, is British Virgin Islands. This gives you 3 major benefits: privacy, protection, and reinvestment. And some of the biggest advantages to all this process that we have heard from clients who've gone through the process is flexibility and a massive reduction in long-term liability. Third major do that we hear from many successful long-term dropshippers and e-commerce clients is that a lot of them have actually moved their company, their holding company, to Hong Kong. Now, this is very popular for those who are looking to expand internationally, to really grow their business, not just in the US market, but globally. And of course, people like this who are strategic want to make sure that they're compliant with everything. There's many great advantages with Hong Kong. Unlike a lot of other tax havens, it has a great banking system, global credibility, and a 0% tax on foreign income if it is structured correct. Now, businesses that qualify for this reduced or even 0% tax are companies that operate entirely out of Hong Kong, doesn't offer services inside of Hong Kong, and even negotiates with suppliers outside of Hong Kong, as well as business agreements being signed outside of Hong Kong. However, in some circumstances, directors might need to even stay in Hong Kong for 60 days. Now, to draw from my own personal experience as someone who's owned physical product businesses, digital product businesses, a marketing agency, and an agency like e-commerce brokers, which sells businesses, kind of like a sales agency, essentially. The reality is, I grew up, born in Australia, operated my business in Australia, and then I left. I started traveling for years, making all of the mistakes, except for not getting taxed somewhere, of course, making all the common mistakes that dropshippers make. I, 1, stayed with my company in a high taxation country, and I got caught up in all my other business operations that I didn't have time, or I felt like I didn't have time to actually go through the process of moving my tax base. However, that meant for, I think it was roughly 3 to 4 years, that I was paying high taxes in Australia, and I didn't spend a day in the country, which means, I'm paying for goods and services from the country that I'm not reaping the reward of. So we used NOMAD structures and their tax services. They will help you set up your company so that it is compliant in a tax haven so you can legally reduce your taxes. And it will be specific advice to your specific business, to your specific scenario, to where you have citizenship, to where you were born, and how flexible you are willing to be. So you can book a call. The link is in the description below. We've used their services. They've been great for me personally and a ton of my clients. So the link is in the description below. Feel free to book a call and talk to one of the professionals there to just see how much money you can save. In the normal operation of your business, how much money could you save having an international tax setup? So those are the 3 do's and the 3 don'ts. We're going to be back with another video next week, so subscribe for more, and we'll see you in the next video.